Hello everyone and welcome back to Time News. Today we've got a gripping topic that's been making headlines recently today. There is a Zionist writer named Zavi Board. This Zionist writer immediately likes to write about Egyptian affairs. He asked a logical question. Why doesn't Egypt fully open the Rafah crossing and allow all aid to enter through the Rafah crossing, providing it to the Gaza Strip? By the way, if Egypt does this, the whole world will stand by it, not just the Arabs. It will have saved and prevented a very large humanitarian crisis, saved the lives of Palestinians, and created a great humanitarian epic. Why haven't Egypt and the Egyptians done this? This is a very important question. Since the first day of the war, everyone has been asking this logical question. Furthermore, the Wall Street Journal published a very dangerous article reporting that the population of the Palestinian city of Rafah, which is opposite the Egyptian Rafah, has increased 4 or 5 times. Before the war, the population of Rafah was 240,000. Now it has become 800,000. The newspaper said that escaping to Egypt is no longer the only solution. There is a lot of questions and very important details related to the American veto yesterday and the story of a failed operation carried out by the Israeli army to free one of its soldiers. A very important video, but in order to tell you about it and reveal its details, I have to tell you the story from the beginning. Let's get straight to the point. What's new today that might be different for you, and you might be hearing it for the first time regarding the Gaza war? There is a writer named Zavi Board who likes to write about Arab affairs. He is an Israeli Zionist, but he often discusses opinion articles and haaretz about Egypt or other Arab countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, or Lebanon. He is particularly interested in Egyptian affairs. From the beginning of the war, he emphasizes that there are countries involved in the conflict both security-wise and ethically. Countries like Egypt and Jordan are threatened security-wise and have relations with Israel. Humanitarianly, the UAE and Saudi Arabia are also involved in the conflict in Gaza. However, he points out that Egypt has not taken a strong stance against Israel. Despite the significant developments in the war, Egypt has not severed diplomatic ties or closed the Rafah crossing to deliver aid and stop the Israeli aggression in any way. The writer explains that there are several reasons for this. One reason is the involvement of a person named Ghassan Alian. Ghassan Alian is the head of the Israeli government's activities coordinator and represents the Mossad. He recently visited Egypt and had important discussions with Egyptian officials. He conveyed a crucial message, stating that Israel does not want to displace Palestinians to Sinai, emphasizing the importance of Egyptian-Israeli relations. According to the writer, Egypt seems to have believed this narrative, but in reality, they are not fully convinced. The article also mentions a scenario where Palestinians in Rafah are facing difficult living conditions, with a significant increase in population and skyrocketing rental prices. The writer indicates that people are suffering from various diseases due to overcrowding, lack of fuel, and contaminated water. The article highlights the harsh humanitarian situation, with people resorting to extreme measures for basic needs. In a poignant moment, the article mentions that a journalist visited Rafah and hosted Gaza residents there. They expressed that they can endure the current situation. But it seems that Sinai is the only hope for their children's future. The option of voluntarily heading to Sinai, not by force, is seen as a way for them to secure a better and safer future for their children. The writer stresses that no one is advocating for invading Sinai, crossing borders, or anything of the sort. Israel has not taken any action against it. Instead, it's about individuals considering Sinai as a potential refuge voluntarily. The truth is that the writer in this article is telling you that if you look at the situation, you'll find that it resembles something that happened in 2008. What happened in 2008 is that armed members of Hamas detonated the border crossing and part of the Egyptian border between Gaza and Egypt. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians stormed the enemy's prison for about a week. All of this is mentioned in the article, not my own words. The reality is that Palestinians went into Sinai for a week, and after that, they returned. Gaza needs to know that they didn't all return. You must know that since 2008, there has been a tremendous change in the situation. There has been a kind of rebellion in Sinai, and this rebellion is not from the locals of Sinai. It is a constant rebellion by Palestinians who have been trained in Sinai. Why? Because these people are not only from the locals of Sinai. When they entered Sinai, they settled, thinking that this is their prominent future and security. They wanted to settle and compensate. When they settled in Sinai, they provided services as they were expecting this. The second thing is that these people wanted to resist from within Sinai, but they didn't know how to face the Israeli army from within Sinai. What did they do? They turned against the Egyptian army. This scenario is what worries Egypt. The part about not resisting Israel but resisting the Egyptian army is not mentioned in the article. I'm telling you that they are just saying that there was a kind of rebellion in Sinai, but I'm explaining to you exactly what happened. This scenario worries Egypt because it's a catastrophic scenario. The scenario of not resisting Israel but resisting the Egyptian army is not mentioned in the article. I'm telling you that they are just saying that there was a kind of rebellion in Sinai. But I'm explaining to you exactly what happened. This scenario worries Egypt because it's a catastrophic scenario. Zavi Board in his article asks why Egypt doesn't fully open the Rafah border crossing to stop the humanitarian crisis in Palestinian Rafah. Keep in mind that Rafah is divided into two halves, Palestinian and Egyptian. We are talking about Palestinian Rafah, which will contain about 1.5 million people, and then remove all the inhabitants of Gaza. So you would have about 2.5 million people standing on the border with Egypt. Don't say to them, what? Zavi Board tells you that if Egypt opens the Rafah crossing completely and brings in all the aid, it will be an official declaration of war on Israel. Egypt is committed not to allow any attack on its borders, otherwise it will declare war. This is the Egyptian principle, but Egypt will not declare war on Israel. The man says that Egypt is currently thinking about its economy. The economic crisis in Egypt is severe, and they need a new loan from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Instead of giving Egypt $3 billion, they are not sure whether to give them a loan or increase this loan to $5 billion. Also, there is a crisis in basic goods in Egypt. Egypt is not suitable for hosting new refugees because, for example, sugar is scarce. Egypt produces sugar but can't find it in the markets. This is a severe economic crisis. Egypt plays this way because it wants to maintain its economic relationship with America, not with Israel. America will continue to mediate for you in your economic conditions. If you want loans, pay attention to Joe Biden's guidelines regarding Egypt's position in releasing hostages. Egypt currently plays this way, but it appears that a completely different scenario will be imposed on Egypt, a scenario that goes against all their calculations. The Palestinians are the ones imposing the scenario, not the Zionists. Egypt will enter the war because, until now, Egypt has built a sand barrier along the entire border to enhance its security presence and police presence. Egypt can deploy police forces on the border to secure the border and prevent it from being crossed. Keep in mind that the writer himself highlighted and told you that Egypt is very tolerant, even to the extent that when there was a war in Syria, Egypt hosted a large number of Syrians. When there was a war in Sudan, Egypt hosted a massive number of refugees, even more than announced. Why doesn't Egypt host Palestinians? For a simple reason. This will end the Palestinian issue.
وأكدت مجددا استمرار مصر في استقبال المساعدات الإنسانية والتزامها بنقل تلك المساعدات لقطاع غزة عن طريق معبر رفح البري لدى سماح الأوضاع بذلك، أخذا في الاعتبار أن مصر لم تقم بإغلاقه منذ اندلاع الأزمة، إلا أن التطورات على الأرض وتكرار القذف الإسرائيلي للجانب الفلسطيني من المعبر حال دون عمله. إذن فكرة النزوح أو تهجير الفلسطينيين من القطاع إلى مصر معناه ببساطة أنه هيحدث أيضا أمر مماثل، هو تهجير الفلسطينيين من الضفة إلى الأردن، وبالتالي يبقى فكرة الدولة الفلسطينية اللي احنا بنتكلم عليها واللي المجتمع الدولي كله بيتكلم عليها غير قابلة للتنفيذ.
Palestine and Gaza no longer have Palestinians. Israel will easily occupy the Gaza Strip. This is the scenario this man sees, and this is why Egypt does not want to host Palestinian refugees. Another thing you should know is that Jordan, like Egypt, has an economic problem. Despite its statements to calm the situation, there is no official or sharp stance from the Jordanian army towards Israel that will only happen if the inhabitants of the West Bank are displaced to Jordan. Regarding Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they also do not want to host Gaza residents or refugees from Gaza for a simple reason. They do not want to end the Palestinian issue. However, this means you can say an official goal. The secret goal is if they host or open the door for hosting Palestinian refugees, it will end the Palestinian issue. This is a disastrous situation. Regarding the war, how long will it continue? Until the end of December, according to reports. According to Politico, 3 U.S. sources claim that Israel has the green light to continue the war until the end of December. Do the Zionists want more? Yes, they want an additional month until the end of January. Who said that? Ma'ariv newspaper. According to Ma'ariv, the U.S. approval is not enough, and Israel needs another month until the end of January. This indicates a potential clash between the U.S. and Netanyahu. Despite Biden's visit to Israel, the first by a U.S. president during a conflict, Netanyahu will likely turn against Biden because he wants the war to continue. If it ends, there will be a significant problem. Following the closest scenario until December, you should know that the U.S. has already implemented this. Just yesterday, a draft resolution was presented to the UN Security Council because the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on the Security Council, stating that Gaza constitutes a threat to global peace and security, a very serious matter. The task of halting the conflict in Gaza was assigned to the Security Council. The Security Council consists of 15 members, including 5 permanent members: the United Kingdom, France, Russia, China, and the United States, and 10 non-permanent members such as Malta, Mozambique, the UAE, and so on. Who introduced this resolution draft? The UAE, which was actively involved in the matter. The truth is that it was one of the most diplomatically engaged Arab countries, but a catastrophe occurred yesterday. The catastrophe is that when the voting time came, the U.S. used its veto power. The problem is not here. The problem is that the only U.S. delegate who objected to the resolution. The resolution proposed an immediate ceasefire for humanitarian reasons. The only U.S. delegate who raised his hand, as you can see precisely like this. The objectors imagined that out of 15 members, the only problem was that Britain immediately voted with the US. France either voted with the US or abstained. For example, all countries voted in favor of the resolution except the US. Even the UK, which is an ally of the US, refused to vote. So the US was in the lead. Zavi Board in his article explains how things are going. He tells you that when Arab countries try to pressure the US, it becomes clear that they will not do anything for them, and the US has the upper hand over all Arab countries. Nothing makes a difference to them. What will move the Americans is the internal situation, not just the external. When the US granted a ceasefire until December, you should know that they will do everything to fulfill their commitment to Israel. For example, Reuters reported exclusively yesterday that the White House urged congressional committees to expedite approval to supply Israel with 45,000 Merkava tank shells. This is a clear indication that Israel has depleted its Merkava tank ammunition and needs support from the US. The Pentagon, or the US Department of Defense, has these shells used in Merkava tanks. America wants to send these shells, but it requires congressional approval. The White House is exerting strong pressure on Congress to provide Israel with 45,000 shells. If the White House fails to expedite approval, it might use something called the security waiver or security exception and send 13,000 Merkava tank shells to Israel. According to the White House's analysis in the article, we are sending these shells for a very simple reason. There is a possibility of a regional war, so Israel must be sufficiently prepared for a regional war. Therefore, we are sending these shells. But this is the White House's analysis. Another analysis is that Israel is indeed losing the composite shells because Israel extensively uses Merkava in Gaza. Israel faces resistance it has never experienced in its history from the Gaza Strip, and the number of Merkava tanks entering is enormous. And these are assault tanks, not defensive. They use the vehicle to storm buildings. Israel has a problem with Merkava ammunition. This is what I want to say. In the end, for the first time, the US issues or leaks the end date of the war, which is the end of December. Israel wants it to extend until January. There will be a disagreement, but leaking the end date of the war is a signal to certain Arab countries not to press and create problems until January. His scenario will be implemented by Egyptians, Americans, and Arab countries, all of whom are the Palestinians who will move to breach the borders. At that moment, Egypt will be forced to enter a war against Israel. This is not a joke, and this is not my conclusion. All this is according to statements from Egyptian officials. I'm not the one saying this. Egypt will then not think economically, or about relations with America, or anything. Egypt will think that its security is threatened. Yesterday, there was an attempt to free an Israeli soldier who was kidnapped by Hamas or held hostage among the 130 hostages Hamas had. The truth is that the son of the chief of staff of the Israeli army participated exactly as I expected, participating in the commando forces that entered to liberate the Israeli captive held by Hamas. The strange thing in the matter is that they killed the commando force. The commandos who were all trained in America were killed, and Hamas claimed that it had seized the equipment that was with this commando force, and the Israeli captive was killed. What stands out in the matter is two things. First, the captive's liberation operation took place in a house in Gaza, not in a tunnel. This means that the prisoners are in houses, not in tunnels. This is a crucial point. Second, it appears that Israel did not scout the main force guarding the captive. This is to the extent that the commando force, including its son, was killed. This is a very dangerous point. As we wrap up today's exploration into the Gaza crisis, we hope this discussion has provided you with valuable insights and a deeper understanding of the multifaceted aspects at play. If you have thoughts, opinions, or questions, please share them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analyses on pressing global issues. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.